The NHO Show.
You got that pressure.
The NHO show is back.
We're back again.
I know. I feel like we need a new intro, Colin. Because I feel like I say,
Back.
hey, we're back every week. Ooh.
And there's our new intro.
There's a new intro. That's fun. I like that new intro. It was like, oh, that's cute. I was dancing. You couldn't see me, but I was dancing.
The Zcast elevator music
Oh,
that
right.
always starts.
Right. So for anyone listening after the fact, we also happen to do this live on this wonderful app called Zcast, which then goes into Twitter. It's all exciting. So if you want Zcast for us, because we're actually Canadian, but I'm sure it's probably Zcast. That sounds cooler. But it's an app, so I actually have no idea how to say it. Who knows? We could all be saying Snapchat wrong.
We're still figuring it out, you know.
The Twitter. Maybe it's Twitter. No, I'm kidding.
You need to go back to English class, I think, sorry.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, when it's an app, you don't necessarily know if what you're saying is right because, because a lot of times, no one says it, right? Unless you actually hear the app name being said, you assume it's one thing, but maybe it is Zcast. Maybe Zcast is there and everyone's calling it Zcast, and, everyone else who's calling it Zcast is actually wrong. Who knows? The things we make up in our head.
I don't know why Z and Z are even different, but I think that might be a conversation for another day.
Okay, well, that's fine. We'll save that. Well, I'll table that for another day.
We'll table it.
Yeah. Okay, well, big exciting news in the realm of the World Juniors this week. Team Canada, Hockey Canada, and Hockey USA, Team USA named their selection camp rosters, which means we have a pretty good idea of who we're going to see close to the end of the month at the World Junior Championships in Buffalo. Both teams have 7 returning players from last year's World Juniors. Colin, why don't you kick us off with a thought on Team Canada's World Junior team?
Well, I thought there was some notable omissions from it that were kind of interesting. Not that I necessarily disagree with, but that some people are looking at it and be like, why wasn't he here? Probably the biggest name would be Owen Tippett, the 10th overall pick in the draft last year to Florida. He actually saw, I think, a few NHL games this year. I know he got a goal in the NHL, so it was strange to see him off the list. At least, I wouldn't be shocked to see him not make the team, but to see him not even, invited to the final camp was kind of surprising. Matthew Phillips is another guy who's he's a little guy. He's very short. He's a guy that if he ever makes it, I think you'll love Storie. Well, he's like 5'6" or 5'7", I think.
Oh,
but
my favorites.
He's tearing up the WHL right now for Victoria. He's a late round Calgary pick, and I mean, again, I see why he might not be on the final roster, but I think the reason why these guys kind of didn't make it is because they kind of had a weak Super Series against Russia, as we talked about a couple weeks ago. Cliff Poo out of London, he's a Buffalo pick, so he could have been playing in front of his hometown fans. Michael Rasmussen, another top 10 pick from the draft last year. And the biggest one for me, though, I mean, he might not even have been on the radar, but I've seen him play a few times this year, is Nick Hague. He's a defenseman that was drafted by Vegas in the second round, and he plays for Mississauga. And he and Owen Tippett's on Mississauga as well. So I've watched a few Mississauga games this year, and personally, I'm not the biggest Owen Tippett fan, so again, I'm not surprised to see him there. But Nick Hague is kind of a jack-of-all-trades defenseman. He's just solid in his own end and big guy, rangy, he's got a long reach, so he can chip in offensively too. He kind of reminds me kind of like a Ryan Suter type. So I was just surprised given the fact that he can kind of play almost any role you ask of him, and he's a big, solid defenseman, that they wouldn't give him a shot, because I think left-handed D is one of our weakest points, but I'll touch on that a little later. But any surprises you see from the roster, or guys that you're looking out for?
I gotta give a big shout out to Michael DiPietro. I know World Juniors was a goal of his for this season, so I'm really happy to see him get a shot. And to be honest, I mean, he's been great. He's been consistently great, and I'm pretty sure he'll make it, and it'll be great to see him in Buffalo. Who else?
It's going to be a battle in net, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I think Carter Hart's got it pretty well locked down. I think goaltending is a big strength of Canada. We don't always say that. It's kind of surprising to see that this year, but
it's a hard
Carter
thing
Hart's,
to be able to say, to be like, yeah, our goaltenders are actually solid. We don't have to worry about them.
Yeah, no, it's really different. But DiPietro's going to have it in tough with Colton Point back there too. He's a guy that has having a big year this year, so the backup position is going to be a well thought out matchup. And to have Carter Hart's, I think, the number one goalie, hands down. But it's just nice knowing that if he does struggle, that a guy like DiPietro Point is there to kind of step right in and kind of not really miss a beat. So, like I said, it's a strength that we can't really say that we've had in the years previous. But I think we're going to need our goalies to be good. Just looking at the lineup.
Yeah.
There's not really... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, when it comes to goaltending, we've talked about this in the past, it takes a little bit longer for goaltenders to mature. And Colton Point having that year on DiPietro, just being that, year older, does give him a bit of a leg up, just having that extra experience in net. A year makes a huge difference when it comes to goaltending.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Hockey Canada will kind of look at it too, like, even if DiPietro doesn't make it, he's probably the top choice to be the starter next year. So it's not like he's going to miss out on his World Junior experience. But we'll see. The best players are going to be selected, so it'll be interesting. Actually, I'm going to be attending, I think, at least a practice or two, because they're going to be held in Niagara, where I'm currently situated. So
fancy.
Yeah, it'll be fun to go see. But I think I just want to touch on kind of our strengths and weaknesses as well. So I named a strength of ours, which is goaltending. I think depth's a big strength of ours as well throughout the lineup, but that kind of leads into a weakness, is that we don't really have that big name forward, that like game-breaking forward in the mold of Tavares or something that can kind of take over a game when he needs to and go and score a goal. It's going to be kind of like scoring by committee with Canada this year. So it'll be interesting to see if they can keep up, because there's Sweden, I think, has probably two of the best guys in the whole tournament with Pettersson and Dahlin, defensive forward up there. So if our depth can save us, and there are guys that are down in the lineup that I think people should keep an eye on. I plan on doing kind of a little blog post this weekend to kind of highlight some different players to watch from each country. So keep an eye out for that, NHO blog fans, but and just World Junior fans, because I think it's a good way to get prepared for the tournament, especially guys from different countries, because everyone will be familiar with everyone from Team Canada when we get a little closer, but I mean, there's prospects from people's favorite teams that you don't get to see that play in Europe or in the States that are definitely worth keeping an eye on for this tourney.
Excellent. So you had a chance to look at the Team USA roster?
Yeah, well, like I said, go ahead, sorry.
Well, no, I was just going to say, where do you think Canada compares to against Team USA, and what they have for their selection camp?
I think, like I said, the difference with the US is that they do have kind of those game breakers like like Casey Middlestat he's going to be playing in Buffalo again, and he's a Buffalo draft pick, so he's got to really keep an eye on. And he's kind of like a Johnny Gaudreau type that can just he's not as small, but he can just dangle through a whole team by himself. And they might have the best line with Middlestat, Logan Brown, and Yamamoto up there. I don't think Yamamoto hasn't really been playing too well since going back, but I think it's just kind of he's lost interest. They've got good goaltending with Ottinger back there. I think he was a first-round pick last year, and they've got good depth. I mean, it's going to be really tough. They've got, like you said, they've got a lot of returning guys, and they won gold, so it's not going to be easy. I think there's a clear top four, and that's Canada, U.S., Finland, and Sweden. And then beyond that, like any one of those four teams can win. So it's going to come down. I think the biggest weakness for Canada is their left-hand D situation, and I'm kind of always amazed how deep Canada is at right-hand D. And that's not just in this tournament. This is just around the world, like in any sort of international play. We just have so much depth on the right side. It's kind of an anomaly, to be honest. Like the right-hand D are so rare to come by that are really good. We have a lot of them that some of them have to play their off wing. So it's interesting to watch. But yeah, U.S. is not going to be a pushover by any means.
Do you think it'll be what it's been in the past, where it comes down to Canada versus USA in the finals? Shootout.
I mean, I would love it, just for some retribution. But I think Finland's got a really good team. Defense for sure. They've got another guy
has been getting progressively better and better and better. As the years go on, they've made a lot of investment in bringing expertise to their teams, bringing in the best coaches, and I think I read something a while back where European teams, especially Finland, have been, and more kind of foreign teams or European teams have been modeling their play after Canadians. Naturally, because Canadians have dominated for so long, but I wonder, it's interesting to see the shift now, because you can't just, in Canadian hockey, you can't just forget the European teams anymore. You can't forget Swiss players. You can't forget Finnish players. Swedish players have dominated for a long time, but there are these teams that are now modeling their game after the way Canadians are taught and learn how to play the game, and are taking it to the next level where they're better than a lot of Canadians.
Yeah, no, I mean, Finland there's been such a huge shift in Finnish hockey, kind of like a passing of the torch. I think the first time we saw it was kind of at the Sochi Olympics, when Solani was there and Koivu was there, but they also had young guys you look at Laine, you look at Mikko Rantanen, there wasn't much Finnish talent in between these two generations, but now that these young guys are getting older, I'm a huge fan of the way Finns play the game too. I think we've talked about that before, but yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting about this tournament too is that there's no clear front runner, and each team has its weakness. I think Canada's a little deeper than the States. I'm not super familiar with all the States players, especially in the bottom of the lineup, and those that play in the U.S. But Brady Tkachuk's on their invite list, and he's draft eligible this year. And there's not one Canadian player that's draft eligible. They've all been drafted. I mean, that might speak to the lack of high-end Canadian talent coming up in this draft, but I think it's also just a testament to the experience that they're bringing back this year. The Swedish forward depth isn't as great. They have the high-end talent, but their depth also I don't think matches Canada. But and then the Finns, they're kind of weak down the middle. They always have great wingers, but their defense and their wingers could get them there. So it's just all going to see. I think the difference is going to be whose weakness won't hurt them the least in the long run, and we'll just have to wait and see, I think.
Very true. Very true. I feel like just to go back to goaltending, I think it'll end up being the final will kind of like last year will end up being a battle of goaltenders and really like who can stop the pucks more. And, who can take a beating more. It's going to be a whole Carey Price carrying a whole team sort of situation.
Yeah, I know. Like I said, what's nice this year is that Canada doesn't have to go against Tyler Parsons in net. Tyler Parsons, in my mind, it might be the best goalie prospect, at least in his age group in the league. There's some that are closer to being NHL ready, but he just wins big games. And he showed that in the World Juniors, showed that in the Memorial Cup. So I'm glad the Canadians don't have to face that this year. And if you're right and it does come down to goaltending, I think I like our chances. So
I'm good with our chances. I'm happier with our chances than I may have been in previous years.
It's gonna be close this year. They're like, I think what my favorite thing about the World Juniors is watching guys that I've never seen play really before and liking their game and seeing them progress to the next level. Like the first time I saw Mark Stone play was World Juniors and thought he was great. Jamie Benn as well, Boone Jenner. So there's always going to be a few of those guys that Canadians fall in love with and that go on to have really strong NHL careers. And it's always a coming out party for a few players. And there's a few guys that I have on my list here that I think could fill that role. And I think the guy I most want people to look out for is Cole Lind. He plays for Kelowna in the WHL, Kelowna Rockets, but he was a Vancouver second-round pick last year, and the guy just scores goals, bottom line. So I think he's going to be a really important player for Canada in a depth role. He'll be on the third or fourth line and probably on the power play, but some of those guys on those bottom lines will need to chip in offensively, and I think he's a guy to look out for. But.
So do you think that because the NHL isn't going to the Olympics this year, and there's still up in the air if the OHL will allow their players or not, do you think there's going to be more attention on the World Junior Championships than there have been in previous years? We know that, by the time Canada gets to the to the quarterfinals, semis, and so forth, people start to actually pay attention. Preliminary rounds are preliminary rounds, and nobody seems to care. But do you think that there might be more attention paid to the preliminary rounds, like to the championship right off the bat, because there's no because anyone who's interested in players who are going to be at the draft this year, because of the non-Olympic involvement?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, if fans aren't paying more attention, then people around the game that are the decision makers definitely are paying attention because of the news with Russia being banned and everything, and KHL players not going to be able to go necessarily. So they're kind of running out of options, Hockey Canada and the IIHF, to where to find players. So there's a good chance that this could be kind of like a tryout for Team Canada. So I would not be surprised to see. And it's going to be really weird because, I don't think CHL has been given the Hockey Canada permission to lose their players because the Olympics are in February?
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. So we'll see rosters come out for Olympic sort of selection camp rosters, or preliminary rosters come out sort of mid-January because they're going to have to go to training camp. That was the big thing with the CHL. The big question was, after knowing that we're going to give up our players for a couple weeks to the World Junior Championship, only to give them up again, you would be picking players from this for the Olympics, only to give them up again in a few weeks after that to go away for another 3 weeks is a little much. And it goes back to, do we want to leave, does Windsor want to lose their star goalie? Do they want to lose DiPietro for literally almost 2.5 months? Not really. They can't really afford to do that.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be tough, I think, for the CHL to come to an agreement, but there's other players not in the CHL that could definitely have a chance, like Cale Makar. He'll be a big player for Canada on defense, and he plays in for UMass in the NCAA. So even if some of the CHL players won't be able to go, there are still a few NCAA players that I'm sure, because the NCAA has a shorter season, and they're done usually a few months or at least a month before, say, the AHL or the CHL. So they're an option, and especially in Makar's case, he's on a really bad team that they're not going anywhere anyways. So he would be an option for Canada, but again, if the CHL doesn't go and doesn't allow it, then it gives even more advantage to other countries like the US or like the Europeans, because the Swedish Hockey League players can still go, the NCAA players can go. So I guess it's another little behind the scenes thing to keep an eye out for, because Canada doesn't really have too many guys that aren't in the CHL, so it gives them a little kind of inherent disadvantage.
There you go. So out of this list, who do you think is the who's kind of those, we've talked about the guarantees, who are the guys who won't make it right off the bat?
On Canada?
Yeah.
Let me pull this list up. I know I've got the guys that will make it. Like, I think, like Colin, for example, like I mentioned, he might not be on a lot of people's radar, but I think he will earn himself a spot, and he had a really good showing in the Super Series. But I'm not gonna pretend like I know. I've seen all these guys play. Boris Kachuk apparently is having a really good year for the Sioux, and the Sioux are doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
But unless he's going to be a guy that kills penalties, I don't know if I really see a spot for him. I think the London Knights guys are making it. Robert Thomas is going to be a big player for them. Alex Formanton, I think he's going to sneak in on the bottom lines, but who's not going to make? I don't know much about Comtois out of the Q. I think it's going to be a battle on D more than anything, between guys like Cal Foote. Connor Timmins has kind of played his way into serious consideration. He was kind of on the low end of the bubble when they were first analyzing things back in September, and he's kind of played his way onto the team more or less, I think. But he's right-handed D. Cal Foote's right-handed. Cale Makar's right-handed. Fabro's right-handed. So there's 4 right-handed guys right there, and then it leaves like Logan Stanley. He's having a better year for Kitchener this year, but he's kind of hasn't lived up to his draft billing, and I don't think ever was expected to. Winnipeg kind of took a reach on him. He's just a big, lumbering guy that the advantage to him and I guess to Canada is that it's going to be played in North American ice. So bigger guys like that won't be exposed as much with the skating, but I don't see Logan Stanley making it. Kel Clegg's going to be a leader on the blue line. I'm really interested in seeing Dennis Sholowski. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I think he could be a good contributor. But Jake Bean's going to make it.
Yeah. Jake Bean's a shoo-in for sure.
I'm not a huge fan of Jake Bean. I'm not.
Oh.
I think Josh Mahura is a guy to look out for to kind of play his way onto the team as well. Like he's a Ducks draft pick. And he could kind of he won't take Bean's spot in the lineup, but he could maybe push Bean down in the depth chart a little bit. And that's where there was one other thing that we're kind of forgetting about, and that's players that could get loaned that aren't on this list from the NHL. So the two most notable guys are Tyson Jost and Victor Mete. And I think both of those guys would be huge boost to the team, because Victor Mete, after his really strong start to the season in Montreal, where he kind of surprised a lot of people and stuck when he wasn't really supposed to stick, he's getting less and less ice time there, and they're seeing more and more success because they're getting some guys back healthy on the blue line, and he's been pushed down the depth chart. So I think for his development, it's probably best case scenario if Montreal did let him go, but it's a really hard conversation to have with a team that is, in a playoff hunt to give up a roster guy. But I think you have to think long term for him, and I mean, I know a lot about Tyson Jost, and he's battled injuries to start the year, and he was down in the AHL last week, just got called up, and hasn't really looked like he belongs just yet. But Colorado's battling a lot of injuries up front too, so I think it would be best for everyone, especially in Colorado's case, they're not going to be competing for the playoffs most likely, to give him that chance, build some confidence, and then if Tyson Jost goes, you probably have your number one center and potentially your team captain. So both those guys would be a huge boost. There's not many guys that are going to cut. And again, I don't know much about Mario Ferrero, but I could give you a list of guys who I think will make it, and then that, I guess, process of elimination will cut the other guys.
Yeah, I sort of feel the same way. Like, there's some obvious standouts and obvious players who will make it. But then as far as, the guys who are going to get cut, that's always the hardest one to kind of determine, because you're like, well, you say, oh, okay, well, this player could get cut, but you don't know what the relationship is going to be like on the ice with, their partners. Pairings might influence some of that. We've seen it before, where standout players, like guys who, dominate the CHL, have been cut from selection camps twice and never actually gotten a chance to play at the World Juniors. And, who are just like shaking their heads, being like, why? And then, but then it really just comes down to, it's not even a question of skill, it's a question of personality. Do you fit on the ice with the rest of your team? Do you work with this coach really well? What's your style of play versus everybody else's style of play? Are you going to mesh? Yay, nay? And that sometimes is what the determining factor is.
Absolutely. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there, especially in these short tournaments. It's all about chemistry. So if guys show chemistry with each other, say one of the bubble guys shows chemistry with a guy who's a lock on the team, it's going to help his chances to make it. And it's a short tournament, so they have to, if you're not going to be one of those guys that are the go-to scorers, because almost every one of these guys on their team is the guy that produces offense. But you can't be that on this team. You have to provide another role, whether that's killing penalties, being on the shutdown line. That's why I think a guy like Robert Thomas is going to be super valuable for Canada. I think he'll be the shutdown center. And that's where I guess a guy like Nick Suzuki, who I'm a really big fan of, he was Vegas' second in the first round last year. He's very, very skilled player, incredible vision, but he's likely not going to be playing in the top six. And if he can't be defensively responsible in the bottom six, even though he's a great playmaker and everything, he likely won't be on the team. So it's important to find their role early in camp and kind of excel at it. And like you said, develop chemistry with the coaches, with the other players, especially, like I said, if they're locks for the team, you want to be on that guy's line. And I think, like you said, it's important to note that even if you don't make this team, it does not mean you're a bad player at all. And there's guys that have made the World Juniors that have not gone on and not done anything in the NHL, and there's plenty of guys like Tyler Seguin, for example, that never saw the World Juniors and have seen huge NHL success. So just if people are worried that their team's top prospect is on the outside looking in, it doesn't really mean much in the long run. So
This is true. So about a year ago, this fun podcast began. It's actually, I think, almost exactly a year ago that we did our first recording.
Yeah, should have had a little celebration.
Yeah, let's pop some bottles later or something. It would have been almost exactly a year ago that we kind of started this thing. And at that time, I think we were talking about the same. We should have an annual World Junior Championship podcast episode, because this is the second time, our first podcast, I think, did touch on World Juniors, but I think it actually specifically touched on outdoor games. And we're going to see an outdoor game, Canada-USA, on December 29th, which is not a preliminary game. It's actually a game that matters.
Which we both will be attending.
Which we will both be attending this game. So, so what has your opinion on outdoor games changed at all?
I think it's funny because I if I recall correctly, that I was very against this outdoor game, and it's just funny that now I just bought in and said, "Oh, I'm gonna go."
You're gonna go be cold. So am I.
Yeah.
We're all gonna be cold.
So even though like my morals disagree with it, like I'm still gonna go.
Well, it's Canada USA. Like it doesn't really matter. I don't. Yeah, it's Canada USA. So you want to watch that matchup. But for an outdoor, I was thinking about this the other day as far as, because the NHL has outdoor games, and these outdoor, and they have them, they're not doing them in October, although some of them are in October, but the majority of the outdoor games, especially this season, are being held December, through to March, where these are actually, and especially this season, they're actually games that matter based on a playoff standing, and points matter so much, especially this season. So, in previous times we've said, you should never play a game that matters on outdoor ice, which I agreed with. And then, but as I kind of look at more of what the NHL is doing as far as outdoor games, all of those outdoor games matter, and the teams just kind of suck it up. It's not a final that's being played on outdoor ice. It's Canada USA. Both of them are going to be in the final anyway. When it comes to World Junior,
hopefully no Finnish or Swedish people are listening.
Yeah. Well, but we're Canadian. We're allowed to toot our own horn here and there. But it's a game that, yes, technically it matters. All games matter, but technically this game does matter as far as where they're going to be in the playoffs and standings. But I have less of a problem that I had with it this year than I did last year, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Last year I was really angry about it.
Yeah,
we were both very angry about it.
We were. I remember.
There's a lot of rage.
You know what? I still kind of am, for similar reasons. Only because I know you mentioned the NHL doing outdoor games, and I mean, I would even throw in the games that they play in China and Sweden and stuff as in that category as gimmicky games that screw with players' routines and with team schedules and things like that. Like, I mean, again, from a Colorado perspective, the Soderberg had a baby, so he couldn't make the flight to Sweden, and he missed both those games. So they had to call up like 3 guys from the AHL to play in those 2 games in Sweden, just because the trip was so far, right? So it messes with NHL teams, but it's a little less of an impact because even though it's a regular season game, it's an 82 game schedule. With the World Juniors, it's such a short tournament that every game is just that much more important. I don't think, and I hope it doesn't affect either team's ability to make it to the medal round. And I mean, if Canada doesn't make it to the medal round because of this outdoor game, then they probably didn't deserve to be there anyway. But I hope, and I'm just all about fairness. It doesn't level the playing field, and sure, it's fair between Canada and the U.S. They're both going out in the same conditions, blah, 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 but teams like Sweden and Finland don't have to play in those conditions. And I mean, for the young kids, I'm sure they're just excited for it, and it might bring out their best games. So you can look at it both ways, but I'm all about fairness. Even though it might seem boring, I would like every team to be on the most level playing field, just so that there's no reasons or excuses or, I'd like to see every team kind of perform in a vacuum, just so we can actually determine who is the best. But I as long as it's round robin, I guess I can't really complain. It's not the New Year's Eve game either, so just keep it out of the medal round and keep it out of the really important games.
I almost think it would be fun if it was the New Year's Eve game. Like, could you imagine, like, you could do it, you go, you get some extra fireworks at 10 p.m. when the game is over. Everyone's celebrating. you know,
Yeah, no, I
you
thought it
can't.
was
You're not
gonna
going
be
to
a
extend the
game
game
at
until
first.
midnight, but which would be cool. It would be cool to have the game end just before midnight, and then everyone stays there, and then celebrates.
And then just parties in the stadium the whole night.
Yeah, you turn the whole thing into a party, and then it
Just
goes
an
all night.
Extra long tailgate.
I was listening to Jake Gardner the other day on Hockey Central, and the guys were talking about like New Year's, because the Leafs are in Vegas for New Year's, and there was a joke or a question that was posed saying, if you guys lose, do you have to get right on the charter after the game, or if you win, do you get to stay in Vegas? And they've got 2 days off after, and it looks like the Leafs are going to have to head home right after Vegas, because Lamoriello and Babs are not going to let them party in Vegas overnight on New Year's Eve.
Lamoriello is such a dad. He's such a party people.
I honestly think it's probably the players are probably like, Dad, you're making the right call. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, I mean, well,
like they're probably like, oh man, we really just want to like hang out in Vegas and party in Vegas, and we'd love for our wives and our girlfriends to come join us in Vegas. It'd be so much fun. Then we could stay in Vegas overnight, and we can, all hang out. But then they're probably like, nope, we know how much trouble we get into. We know what's going to happen in Vegas. This is probably for the best.
Well, I wouldn't say that everyone's saying that, I'm sure.
Okay, there's probably some players on that team who are like, you're right, Dad. Also, there are enough players on that team who can't drink, technically, in the States. It's probably the ones who really want to have the most fun. And so they're probably like, yeah, you know what? It's cool if we come back, because we get to have a champagne on the plane, so it'll be fine.
I think it's just fine. Lou and Babs are just like father and grandpa,
Oh my God, yeah.
Don't grow beards. You can't grow beards. You can't stay out in Vegas for New Year's Eve. Like, just let me live my life, Dad.
You don't even know me. This is a house of lies. You don't understand my needs.
I'd be pretty mad, but I'm not a professional hockey player, so
yeah,
I can't really
yeah.
talk.
Sometimes it's good when somebody says to you, I'm not going to let you do that. And you're like, I hate you right now, but on January 1st or January 2nd, whenever our next game is, I will thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure it's better. The Leaf fans should be thanking them.
Yes, yeah. We need Leafs fan needs some solid wins here. None of this shootout lot wins things. We need real wins. Real wins.
Last night was kind of Calgary deserved to better there, but
yeah.
I digress.
You digress. Okay, so
anything else you want to talk about World Juniors? I think we've covered.
No, we've covered it off. I mean,
quite a bit. Yeah, and like I said, I plan on doing a few previews for it on the blog. So if anyone wants kind of a little extra preview and extra knowledge on heading into it, they can find that there. But speaking of fairness and equality, it looks like. And more news will come out later tonight, but there's a good chance Seattle will be getting an NHL franchise to finally even out all of the divisions.
This is true.
And, any thoughts on Seattle getting a team, Store?
I am so excited for Seattle. I would be more excited if it was Quebec, because Quebec City has wanted it for so long, and it would be great to have another team in Canada, but also terrible to have another team in Canada on that side, because of where they would be. But I'm so pumped for Seattle. They have wanted this for so long. There have been rumors for so long, and the fact that it's finally starting to happen, I am over the moon, overjoyed, so excited.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised, honestly, when first expansion rumors came out years ago. I thought Seattle would be the first one in, so I'm kind of surprised it took this long. Obviously, it's a lot more to it than just saying, oh, you get a team. They need the arena, which it looks like they're getting. And I mean, I don't think the market was ever going to be a question, because they're so close to Canada and so close to Vancouver. There's going to be, like, even if you live on Vancouver Island, like in Victoria, I think it's closer to go to Seattle than it is to Vancouver.
That is correct.
So it's gonna be there's gonna be a lot of Canadian fans going to the games, which is gonna be great. Especially they probably save some money, kind of similar to what Toronto fans do when they go to Buffalo. So they should have a full building most nights, and they don't have to compete with like a basketball team throughout the winter. So that's another plus. Basically from February to when the start of baseball season, they have no other sport team to compete with. So yeah, it should be a success, an all around success, I think. Any thoughts? Any names have you thought of, or
Not any names. I just think that it's going to be great for Canucks fans. I think it's going to actually drive up. I think it's going to drive more fans to Vancouver. I think it's going to create better fans in Vancouver.
Shot the Vancouver fans.
I mean, I don't even
I don't
think
disagree with you. I just think
Vancouver
it's
fans
funny
will
that-
say it. Like, Vancouver fans are really, really excited when Vancouver's doing well. And when they aren't doing well, they couldn't give two shits. So I think it's going to make Vancouver fans more loyal to their team. I think it's going to make them I think it's going to drive more fans to the Canucks. So I think a team in Seattle is just good for everybody at the end of the day. And it's good for Canadian hockey, because it means more people are actually paying attention to the Canucks and starting to actually care more.
Yeah, I think it'll definitely build like an inherent rivalry just because they're so close to each other. So it'd be nice to eventually see those two teams face in the playoffs and kind of see the opposing fans in each team building. That'd be fun. But I will say that on the topic of expansion, I'm not sure how thrilled I am with it, like that the NHL is going to 32 teams, just because it's diluting the talent in the NHL, and we've already seen this season it's a good example of how close everything is in the standings. And I mean, that's what the NHL wants. It wants parity. It wants everyone to be competitive, but there's so many fewer like really like good teams. It's so much harder to have a really good team, especially with the salary cap and everything. So it kind of just makes a lot of guys that shouldn't be in the league necessarily have spots. But it gives advantage to, I guess, those guys like the Brandon Leipzigs of the world who were kind of a top six or bust type of player to get a shot actually in a top six. So I guess if you're looking from a player standpoint, it's good. But I mean, as a fan of hockey, I think we're going to see the level of play decline slightly. And I would not be surprised, hopefully not anytime soon, but within the next 10 years or so, to see the NHL maybe lose a franchise or two. But
yeah,
we'll see if that comes to fruition.
I personally fear change, so I know that's a joke. But I feared quick change in the NHL. I think, we just had Vegas, like, let the dust settle on Vegas for a little bit before we start thinking about another team. It's it's like too much too fast. There was so much fanfare around Vegas. I really don't know how much more hockey fans can really handle around another franchise, in Seattle, and getting that so soon after. And then, at that point it's like you said, we regress and lose a couple of teams, which will be devastating for a lot of fans. Or, even on the other side, it's like all of a sudden within the next 5-10 years, we've got a bunch of new fans or a bunch of new teams that, every time there's a new team, it's like, oh, great, cool. No one's excited anymore because the level of play has gone down. You can only blow things out of the water so often before people just kind of get used to it and accustomed to it, that it's not exciting anymore. It should always be exciting when there's a team added to the NHL, and if you expand too quickly and you add too many players too quickly, it's like, oh, don't care anymore. What's this other thing going on over here?
Yeah, exactly.
I highly doubt that'll happen, but it's one of those things that too much too fast leads to people being bored and uninterested.
Oh, and you have to think about it. Like, there was just an expansion draft, and like, how mad are you if you're a GM, if you're stockpiling all these young assets, and then you lose one to Vegas, and then, oh, here comes another expansion draft, and you're going to lose another asset. And I bet you the expansion rules are going to be identical because Vegas is seeing so much success. So, like, a team like Nashville's lost James Neal. There's going to be like another guy that you have to just cross off your roster and you lose for nothing. So got to be frustrating from a GM standpoint. And as you mentioned, I mean, teams moving around, like we saw today, there's a sale of the Carolina Hurricanes. Like, obviously they're not moving, but it just shows that, and we talked about Ottawa and Eugene Melnyk and his financial struggles. Like, why keep expanding when some of the leagues currently, our teams currently in the league are struggling financially, and maybe focus on relocating them or helping them out, because we have Vegas, then we're gonna have Seattle, and then who knows, Florida could be on the move to Quebec City. So there's just gonna be all these new teams, and it's hard to keep fans engaged in those markets if their team changes every few years. So it'll be interesting to watch, that's for sure.
It's always interesting to watch. We can't predict the future. We can
I feel like
only...
I say that every episode.
You do,
It'll be
you do.
interesting to watch.
It'll be interesting to watch. Well, we can't predict the future, and neither can anybody listening. So, we can always
We can just speculate.
We can speculate, include our thoughts and our feelings, our personalities, and that's about all we can do.
Yes. Final thought before we sign off here.
Oh, I felt like that was my final thought.
I have one.
Oh, great. Okay, here we go.
My final thought. Well, it's more of a state. I put money on the Anaheim Ducks winning the Cup last night. It was one of those like post midnight, maybe not great decisions, but
Okay. Was there alcohol involved?
no alcohol. But I was just like maybe like some insomnia and stuff.
Okay.
But I was thinking, because I watched the Anaheim game last night, and I was like, wow, like they're really like hanging in there despite all their injuries. Like Getzlaf and Kessler should be coming back within the next couple weeks before Christmas, and they're hanging in the playoff spot. They just got Adam Henrique in the trade. He's not only performed very well for them in the situation, but he's known as kind of a big game player, so he should help a lot in the playoffs. And they have just great depth up front. They've got great defense, young defensemen, but still great. So once they're healthy, and I mean, John Gibson, if you haven't seen John Gibson play this year, you should watch him. The guy, I don't think there's ever been a goalie that has a .920 save percentage or above, but also rocks like a 3 goals against average. Like, that's just unheard of. And it just shows how little support he's got because of all the injuries. But Anaheim made it to the conference final last year once they get all healthy and get rolling, and it's mostly because of the odds. I put $50 down and I could win probably, I think, like $2,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they're like one of the lowest odds, and that's why I picked them. But I still think Tampa's probably going to win, but I think Anaheim has a shot to at least make the finals, and who knows what happens after that.
All right. Well,
keep
if
it
you
on
win
those
that $2,000, you're going to have to share it with everybody.
Yeah, right.
with all of our listeners.
Yeah, all 4 of them.
Yeah. With all of our 4 listeners. All right. Well, we're all going to root for you and hope that Anaheim wins I can't even get through that sentence.
I mean, I don't care if they do. It's $50, but
Right.
I won't be mad if they did. No.
That'd be pretty neat.
I'm just saying, mark this day in your calendar, and then I can either gloat about how right I was, or just not mention it ever again.
I think every year on this day, on December 7th, we should do we have to do an annual World Junior show, a anniversary show, and then you have to put $50 on the team you bet to win the cup.
Yeah, well, I put like
3 things
at the Bay last year, and that didn't turn out too well.
Okay. Well, 3 things you have to do on December 7th every year. That'll be our thing.
I'll write it down.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to set a note in a calendar reminder for a year from now. Do 3 things. These 3 things specifically. Nothing else. You can't do anything else during the day.
That's good.
All right.
That's
Cool.
a good day.
That's a good day. It's a great day. All right. Well, that was your final thought. I'm just going to let you have that. And I wish you all the best, Colin, on your quest to your Stanley Cup win.
I appreciate that, Star.
All right. Well, this was a wonderful, insightful, exciting World Juniors mostly focused episode of the NHO show with Storie and Colin. And you can also tweet at us at the NHO show. You can find us on Facebook. You can email us, the nhoshow@gmail.com. Let us know what you think. Stay tuned for blog posts. There's, really, it's all this information, and it's great, and you should listen. And tell your friends.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays. Happy holidays. We may or may not do an episode next week. We'll figure that out. But if not, we'll do one right before World Juniors start as a total World Juniors preview. Who's going to be there, who won't be there, how excited we are, holiday themed. Maybe we'll film it. Oh, Colin, quick thought. Sorry. So I feel like, and maybe we should take a poll. Should we do the next episode, or the episode before the Christmas break? Should we do it live, as in stream live, but in elf costumes? Hockey-themed elf costumes.
Getting an elf costume.
Or like Santa hats.
I could do like ugly Christmas sweater, type thing. Yeah,
we should go get those ugly hockey Christmas sweaters.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. So let us know what we should wear for the next, in 2 weeks from now. So you have 2 weeks to let us know what you think we should wear, outfit-wise. We are going to wear clothes. Outfit-wise for our next episode. Tweet at us at the NHO show.
Alrighty.
All right. And enjoy the next few weeks of World Junior anxiety while we wait to see who's going to go, who won't go. And then, more random Olympic bombs will drop.
Yes, ma'am. Always news coming out.
Always news. Okay. Thanks for listening. Thanks for thanks for hanging out with us. We're the NHO show. And that's a wrap.
And good night.